Today on Lightning Bugs, I learned so much on making our record. I put many of those things in my book. You were talking about the difference between amateurs and professionals. In your experience, there were many amateurs which were possibly more talented and better at what they did than professionals. But the professional can do it at 12 o'clock or 8 o'clock. They can come up, show up on time, and actually do it. Where an amateur might show up at 8 o'clock and go,
I need a 7-hour warm-up, right?
I need a 7-hour warm-up. What, do you still agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, what is the difference between a professional and an amateur, except, of course, the exchange of money? But, you know, there's those shows on TV about America has these talents and stuff. They're incredibly talented people. The judges, are so untalented compared to a 6-year-old boy. You go, wow, that kid is talented. Now, can he do it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and do it at 8 o'clock in the evening? That's another case, Maybe his tummy might hurt him. The repetition, doing 8 shows a week, for example, on Broadway, is debilitating. As, if you come in and you do a moment and then you're gone. No, but if you're the lead in a show and you got to sing or perform for an hour and a half, and then, hey, God, it's over. The matinee's over. You're done at 5 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, 3 hours later, you got to do it again.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking, that guy is paid. And in those days, it was like $100. Now it's like, I don't know, $200-300 for a ticket. So this whole evening has cost me $500. This better be good. And if you're going like, oh, no, I don't feel like doing it today. I'm not going to do it tonight. That's ruinous.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot. Hello, everyone. We're back with another episode of Lightning Bugs. Today, my guest is the one and the only William Shatner. He's an actor, an author, a producer, a director, a screenwriter, and he's a musician. And we all know Captain James T. Kirk from the original Star Trek, right? Then there's T.J. Hooker and Boston Legal. And well, everyone knows who the hell William Shatner is, so we won't go down the list. But when he speaks, you listen. You may or may not know that he's released 10 albums. I happen to have produced his 2004 album Has Been, one of my most cherished memories of recording, and I believe an utterly unique album, and I am not biased. He's got a new album set to be released on September 24th, so be sure to check that out. I've heard some of it. It's really good. I'm very excited about my conversation with my old friend Bill. So let's get started. William Shatner. 1, 2.
When did you start this podcast?
About 6 months ago.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I am, because mostly I talk to, my first one was with an anthropologist, and then with a tap dancer and musicologist.
And what's the interview about? Because I'm doing something like that. What's your interview about?
Creativity. And I'm going to soon show you my interviewer prowess by becoming the interviewer, because you're like the alpha interviewer. You're interviewing me, Bill.
I've got an interview show which I've been titled "I Don't Understand," and I want you to come on because I want to talk about music.
Yeah,
which I don't understand.
Man.
Yeah,
I will tell. Well, the thing is about interviewing, and this is why when we were making Has Been, I don't know if you remember this, but the first day I interviewed you for hours. We have about 4 hours of material of my interviewing. And the reason is I wanted to hear you say things about your life that might be in your songs. You'd already written like 25, 30 pieces of lyrics, but I wanted to hear how those stories actually came out if you were being conversational rather than waxing poetic, right? And so you told me these stories and the poetry was great, actually. Like, you're a seriously good writer. And so it's like 4 hours. And one day, you don't hear yourself talk for 4 hours, but I love it. You got this story about a set you were on, and you told the wind to stop.
I did.
Do you remember that? What is that? What the fuck was that?
I don't remember the telling you the story, but I remember the moment when I was desperate for the wind to stop.
And you said, "Stop!" And the
Well, I
wind
did even better than that
stopped.
in my stentorian voice. Stop the wind!
And then you said right after it, and the wind stopped.
The wind stopped.
Amazing. I love that story. And you were also talking about, and this is where I want to start because it's creativity. You told me a thing. I learned so much on making our record. I put many of those things in my book because I feel like I was getting a lesson from someone who had made so many things. Like you've just been involved in Nuts to Soup or Soup to Nuts, whatever the fuck it's called. You've been involved in so many things and collaborated on so many things that for someone like me who only works with musicians that have had my amount of experience, it was really big. And one of the things was you said, you were talking about the difference between amateurs and professionals. And you probably don't remember this and you may not even agree with it anymore, but you said that in your experience, there were many amateurs which were possibly more talented and better at what they did than professionals. But the professional can do it at 12 o'clock or 8 o'clock. They can come up, show up on time, and actually do it. Where an amateur might show up at 8 o'clock and go,
I need a 7-hour warm-up, right?
I need What, do you still agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, what is the difference between a professional and an amateur, except, of course, the exchange of money? But so many amateurs, there's those shows on TV about America has these talents and stuff. And they're incredibly talented people.
I agree.
The judges, are so untalented compared to a 6-year-old boy. You go, wow, that kid is talented. Now, can he do it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and do it at 8 o'clock in the evening? That's another case, Maybe his tummy might hurt him. Yeah.
Well, and also just the repetition might.
Right.
Might not be able to do it with feeling.
Exactly. That's probably more significant than anything else. The repetition, doing 8 shows a week, for example, on Broadway, is debilitating. As if you come in and you do a moment and then you're gone. No, but if you're the lead in a show and you got to sing or perform for an hour and a half, and then, hey, God, it's over. The matinee's over. You're done at 5 o'clock, and at 8 o'clock, 3 hours later, you got to do it again.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking, that guy is paid. And in those days, it was like $100. Now it's like, I don't know, $200-300 for a ticket. Well, this whole evening has cost me $500. This better be good. And if you're going like, oh, no, I don't feel like doing it today, I'm not going to do it tonight. That's ruinous.
Yeah, it is. How do you deal with that when you've done stage where you're doing a matinee and another show at night, and you're probably dark 2 nights a week, so you're doing this like 6 times a week?
Right.
How do you deal with the repetition? Are you still feeling it, or are you going through the motions really well?
No, they have a gear. There's a gear that I won't say most professionals, but for me, at any rate, you hit a gear, and now not only the words and the music coming by rote, so is the emotion. So since I believe people like yourself, your emotions are so close to the surface. There's been so much hurt and so much stuff that you stifle all day long anyway, that you're in close communication with it. It doesn't take much for you to feel upset, because you're upset about whatever.
So you're feeling it.
I'm feeling it
as you do it.
But there's a button that seems to be pushed, so you're feeling it, and you're feeling it. It's like being aware of the audience. When you do a performance on stage, I imagine most people, you're about 10% conscious of the audience and their reaction. So you can, oh boy, they're suddenly listening, or there's a little bit of activity going on. Maybe you should be a little bit louder and grab them a little. You're tuned in about 10% of the audience. I'd like to compare notes with you, and you manipulate the material in order to guide yourself to control that 10% if possible. and and
Yeah.
uh, and so that's this part of you is aware of the audience. You've incorporated them now after enough rehearsal in front of an audience. You've incorporated them as a character essentially in
Oh,
your
interesting.
material, so you know where the laughs are. So you say, "Take my wife, please," and you wait a moment because the
It
laugh is
always
there.
gets a
You know,
laugh.
right? And why do I always go to that joke?
It's it, you know.
Anyway, that's my thought.
We worked on that album, and I was used to working with rock and roll musicians who would tend to give me second, third, fourth, fifth takes that were very similar. Um, Maybe they knew that they probably had a pitch issue in one, so they did the same exact performance, but probably concentrated a little bit more on certain things that they thought they got wrong. Yours were wildly different. And I learned so much about that. I would say, why don't you do that one like the last one? And you'd be like, why? I'm going to give you something else. Let me surprise you. And you kept saying,
Right.
let me surprise you. And I was like, boy, this guy really is rock and roll. I mean, everyone else has been just acting
Well,
like it.
and I somehow have continued to do the same thing. Great, so let's take another take, okay? And you look for something new and fresh. And
Right.
it's, or I might say, "Did you like that take?" It's yeah, it's really good. So why do you want to do another one? Yeah,
That's right.
just for safety's sake. So why don't you print that twice? Is what.
That's right. No, but you're exactly right. I mean, there would be reasons why maybe you were on or off the mic, or there's something that we might be able to
Right.
use in editing. But the beauty of being dangerous like that, there's a little bit, I don't know how accurate it is, but it was in that Doors movie. And they had Jim Morrison screaming his brains out in the sound check, essentially in the studio, and the producer says, "You might want to save that for the take." And Jim Morrison said, "Why?" And in a way, that's I only have met one person who actually did this, and that's
But
you.
I understand that
Yeah,
because if you're geared for the performance, that's your performance.
that's it. Yeah.
And it's not automatic and you don't say, "Okay, here we go again." It's like it would be like a race car driver driving as fast as he can. He gets in the car,
Mm.
green light, and you go, and now you're driving as fast or whatever you're doing, you're going around a turn and you're into the turn. Now you're going to approach that turn the same way, but you're going to brake there, you're going to speed there,
Mm.
there's a technicality to it that isn't technical. Maybe that's another way of putting it.
I always think of it as collaborating with your circumstances. As your circumstances change, you're going to adjust and collaborate with it. If you're in the middle of a performance, and I think you told some story of being in a play where you were supposed to reach into a drawer and pull out a knife, but somehow am I crazy, or is there a
No, no,
spoon?
no. I was supposed to stab the guy to death,
Yeah.
and the prop guy on this show didn't put the knife there. But it was like a bar, so they had placed a corkscrew.
You screwed him.
I screwed him to death.
Hey, Ben, Richard from Florida. Been a fan for many, many years. Can't wait to actually see you here in Tampa in a few months. And honestly, my favorite show of all time was sitting orchestra, watching you open the season with the Nashville Symphony Orchestra. That was pretty amazing, I gotta say.
Thank you.
But my question is, out of all the songs that you've written in your entire catalog, what's your most favorite and why?
Well, I'm such a broken record and boring about the way I answer favorite questions. I don't really have a favorite of anything. Like, um, I'm sort of an equal opportunity um, person when it comes to my songs. Usually, the last thing I've written gets a special bump, and then every night I play a set. There'll be one part of a song or something that sticks out. I tend to have favorite parts of songs. Let me think. I played a couple nights ago in New York, and my favorite song that night, I think, was Kylie from Connecticut. And normally that's not something I'd say, I don't know. It seemed to work at that time. So all I'm saying is that I don't have favorites, but I do have favorite moments. Like there's a moment in the song, and it's in the production to me more than the song of "Selfless, Cold, and Composed." That I don't know. It just sounds kind of neat and classic. And every time it goes by, I go, "Wow, that's pretty cool." But thanks for your question. Sorry, I'm not good at answering that one. I don't have favorites.
You reminded me of two stories that I haven't thought of in years. That's funny.
Oh man, well, that's the thing. Impressionable young minds. You were saying shit you probably didn't even believe, and I took it all to heart, and it's all part of the way that I live and think
Well,
now.
you're the same way. Now, I watched you. I think it was the Hollywood Bowl. I didn't make myself known. I knew you were performing, and that's why I went. There's so many people I didn't tell you in advance I was going to be there, but I saw you. You got angry over something. There was an element of anger in your performance. Do you recall anything like that? Something, I don't know what it was, an audience reaction, some of the guy on stage or something. You
Probably
got
stage.
the piano and you stand, and it was incredible. Not only was the performer performing, but there was a visceral thing there.
That's interesting.
Incredible. It's great.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me. I guess I'm enough of a repressed Southern white guy that it only occurred to me listening back to recordings years after making them, what a gear, even if I was smiling in the music, what a gear anger was for me in the piano, and why my hands are destroyed now. It's from.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I still play. I don't do anything differently, really. But yeah, there's no cartilage.
Wow.
I still pound it, but I get out quicker. Yeah, I get out quicker now.
And I agree with that, because for the longest time, when I was approaching a line, the first appeal, the first emotion that I would go to when I read the line, it was anger. And then later on, I might say, well, why am I so angry there? I'll change it to something else. But my first choice in reading something was that anger.
Yeah.
What am I angry about?
Why?
Then, well. So I've got a new album out. I can't wait for you to hear it. You're going to.
I've heard bits and pieces. I wanted to be on it. I couldn't get my schedule right.
Man, not only that, I've asked you to be on that album, and time ran out. But if we have any luck at all, and any success with this first album called Bill, there'll be a second album, and you got to be on that second album, because we've written incredible songs that are so personal. So.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, and I like that about it. And I had chosen "There's a Lion on the Wall."
A Lion on the Wall.
I couldn't get it,
we didn't record it. Lion on the Wall is available.
No, okay. I'm staking my claim on it. Then
you got it.
I'm going to make that.
But about anger,
yeah.
I've got this wonderful poet, Rob the poet, we call him. So I talked to him about this. And he comes up with words and insights that are. But where does the anger come from? As I began to talk about my school, the beginnings of school, like first and second and third grades, when you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I was going to school in Montreal, and every day, because I'm Jewish, every day these guys would gang up on me, and they'd try and beat me, and I was beating them back, and they would say "dirty Jew," and they would pound me.
Jesus.
And I would fight back, and I'd fight back year after year. And here's what happened. Here's the insight. When you get beaten up a lot for being something, black, whatever curse they lay on you if you're black or Latino, if you're some minority of some kind, and they beat you up because you're that minority, they can induce in your subconscious, am I subhuman? Am I sub-intelligent? Am I dirty? Am I?
Right.
And they beat you like we know that you can do in jail. or in jails that are working that way, they can do that. So you begin to believe maybe you're inferior.
Hmm.
And it takes maturation. And say, wait a minute, and to this day, my first choice is anger, but now I'm able to condition and saying, wait a minute, what am I angry about? And so
Right.
one of my songs reflects that anger.
Can I ask what it's called?
What? Tuffy.
What's it?
I'm
Tuffy?
called Tuffy. I
Huh.
had to be tougher than the rest.
I think actually you told me I hadn't changed in a few years. I see as I'm looking at the two pictures, I'm seeing you haven't you've got more energy than I do. Yeah, it's that dopamine thing. I remember you told me about you have like awesome stores of dopamine. At least that's what you told me.
Well, I'm doing a lot. I've got
got some dopamine.
a really good show on the History Channel called The Unexplained. It's all about, what if you put a needle, if a sorcerer puts a needle through a doll and the guy drops dead and he's 1,000 miles away, what's the answer to that? How is that possible? And what is clairvoyance? And how did they build that underground city? And where did those Russian students go? Why did they run? So there's all kinds of mysteries out there. So the show's called The Unexplained. And then this talk show is I Don't Understand, which is you can it's streaming. I don't understand. I did a show about death. Guy had written a book about death. Why should I be afraid of dying? I talked to him about it, and they're being very generous in terms of praise for these things that I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk to you on this show because what I don't understand, and I'll just give you a hint of the questions I would and will ask you, is how did music begin?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you graduated. You must have studied something like this, and then you must have an opinion on
An
where
opinion, yeah.
did we become musical? Where did the drum? The drum is basic, boom, 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 which you had a scholarship on. But who's put the first gut on a thing to pluck?
I know.
How did that happen? Who thinks? I'm going to kill that cat. I'm going to take that gut. I'm going to pluck it, and it's going to be music. Who thinks of that's
I
totally
know.
outside?
It is.
Plucking an apple from a tree.
Yeah, and it's I mean it happened over so many years and centuries and thousands of years.
How many years?
Thousands. I mean,
thousands of years. But
yeah.
prior to domestication.
Yeah, I think prior to domestication, I'm not a musicologist, but when I talk to people who know about this and anthropologists, of course, they're only theories, but they seem to all begin with sound stories.
What do you mean?
Well, if you're laying in bed and you hear something going down your street and it's going. You get a lot out of that really quickly. Like you go, okay, well, someone's dragging something. Okay, what are they dragging? It sounds like it's something heavy. And they're going from the left to the right of my house, and that's towards this direction. And they sound scared. Well, they're speeding up. And now they're going away from you. You hear all these things that are stories. So all of these elements, people want to tell stories with these elements.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, and so from an anthropological point of view, the sound is not only probably our first metaphor, but metaphor predating language.
Right.
It's a way of telling a story. It's like if you hear someone going, woo!
Right. So that's the human voice you're saying might have been the first musical instrument.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. Or pounding on things. I mean, it makes sense to be percussion. Pounding, any kind of percussion. It does make sense. I mean, I would only be getting into speculative and sort of bad paraphrasing of people. But if you talk to someone like Daniel Levitin, Daniel Levitin, or Charles Lim, or any kind of he's an ears guy, they're fascinating to listen to, because in anthropologists that's who you ought to have on your show, is have these anthropologists on your show.
But then there's the question of not only the instruments, and how you blow grass in between your thumbs, and that begins the reed, I guess. But the drums, not just tom-tom, boom, 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 but the intricacy of rhythm that you're able to evoke from a series of big drums, little drums, kettle drums, cymbals. Suddenly, there's a whole aspect to music that you never thought of, and how an individual like you is able to do it is it's dazzling.
Well, it's a different. We're all using different radars and gear that we have in our head to stay in time. Having worked with you enough now and done enough television where we were performing the songs, and wondering, how is a non-musician going to know we've gone 8 bars? Because once we go that 8 bars, if you're not on it with us, it's just going to train wreck. Conan's going to come out and say, "Thank you very much," in the commercial. Right. Everyone says that, and
you're still playing, right?
You're still playing, right. And you've locked off. I mean, it's right. How is he going to do that? And there were times, I remember one very specific one, the first time we played together, where you had the band and me absolutely scared to death that you weren't going to come in on a beat. But at the end of the day, you were actually using that as theater. So by your telling the story in the cadence, in the timing, that you feel, you were as accurate as the musicians were counting the bars.
In my way. Now, let me tell you another moment you and I shared. I know you'll remember, but my daughter was there, so she offers the perspective of the audience. You and I were rehearsing one of the numbers that we did on our album, on Has Been. And you suggested I sing some other number as well, and one of the numbers. And I said, well, how do you think I should start it? And you said, I'll put a spotlight, and you raise a finger to the audience. Do you recall that?
Yes, that's right. So we had a tight spot on your middle finger.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And I did Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. They went crazy. The whole band, you and I, took our bows. We don't have any other numbers. Thank you very much. And my daughter said, for a half an hour, it was Who's Is This left the building. They were there wanting to come back for a half an hour. She says, I've never seen anything like it.
That's amazing.
And it was you saying, put a spotlight on this broken finger.
It's my
that was like one of the wildest moments I've ever, because we were backstage listening about it. We don't have anything else to do.
I know. We're the only professional band on stage, and we've actually done all our material.
Right. We can make something up as we go along. Anyway,
that was my only moment of theater direction, I guess, in my entire career.
Right.
Was the middle finger.
That was a fabulous moment. It was
the Anger Brothers.
Right, exactly. The Anger Brothers, the angst. The moment was so large, and not only was it large, but it harkened back to some of the great moments in musical history of people who wouldn't let performers leave the stage.
Yeah, no. That was a special show. That was at the El Rey Theater in.
That's right.
In L.A.
You know, I'd heard that you wanted to talk about something that your audience could relate to.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is all stuff that they can relate to. Well, basically, my premise is this: I think everyone's creative, or we wouldn't be people. I mean, that's part of evolution. You have to create your life. You create your persona, what you wear, your job, your family. This is creation. But people don't value creativity, I believe, as much as we should. And it's important to point out to people that there's a method to creativity. Your whole life has been dedicated to it. So I feel like anything that you offer is is valuable in that way. And all you have to do is really talk. I've got specific questions I think would be interesting to hear your
Well,
answers.
you're going to ask specific question, but I had such an interesting idea that I thought I'd proffer it to you.
Yeah.
And whether you want to do it tonight,
Send it up.
today or not, you can use it somewhere else. And my thought was, we're in an era. We're in this era of change, of vast change, physical, mental. We're in an era of such stupidity that it may reign supreme in all the eras of stupidity of mankind. But we're also in an era of such intelligence.
I could not agree more. I think about this every day.
We're discovering new things
Incredible.
that are so human, that are so vital to humanity, that it's a race.
It's totally, you sound like me talking at dinner.
and it is a race. We're going to be, in 100 years, that could be the end of humanity.
That's right. You're exactly right.
But if we got this intelligent thing going, we might be able to not only save humanity, but go flower to a whole new era of what mankind means on Earth. And I thought your audience could draw up a list of the most stupid things they've ever heard of and done, and the most intelligent things. And so this list, like cars racing side by side.
Yes. And the race, it's all I can think about now. You see the most elevated, interesting, enlightened thought, creativity, thinking, discoveries, thinkers. And then at the same time, you see the kind of dumb that I have no words.
There's no words. And if you had the words, you'd lose half your audience.
You'd lose
40% of it. So you just know that almost half the people in the world are doing stupid things, and the other half are doing these marvelous things that are not part
half
of our
is very generous, but yeah.
So that's what that was a thought that hit me last night.
I love it. Well, here's what we can do with that then. I call them New Week's resolutions for this show, which is my guests tell us, for this week, I will do this, like an exercise. Like could be you read something, or you recite something, or you sleep in, whatever. It sounds like if I'm hearing you right, what yours is write a list of the incredibly enlightened, intelligent things that you've seen or heard of,
and the stupid. And don't do one and do the other. Now your choice is don't do the stupid. Don't do the stupid and do the intelligent, or don't do the intelligent and do the stupid. That's your choice. I mean, we're in a democracy, but make a list of the most stupid thing you've ever heard of and the most intelligent thing which side would you be on?
That's so interesting. Well, you know what I imagine, and I've yet to do it, I'm going to, is that sometimes the dumbest fucking thing you ever heard ends up being brilliant. Like sometimes it's that basic, and that's the premise. At least I heard him say this. I have to believe he was earnest when he said it. Philip Glass, the composer, said he tries to compose things which would make you wonder, is he an idiot or is he a genius, because of its simplicity and its childishness and its the naivety that it brings in its statement. But actually, it's not.
I agree with that, because the older I've gotten, the more I realize how you've got to winnow away the details and the superfluous stuff. You need so little, really. And what the stuff you do need can be expensive if you can afford it and all that kind of thing. But you don't need a grand house. You don't need multiple cars. You might be in a nice house. It's very pleasant to be. I'm very happy to be in my house. It's a nice house, got a view.
Are you still in the same place?
Yeah.
I heard dogs, so I know they're not the same ones. I think
I'm always having two Dobermans.
Two Dobermans.
Well, they need each other, you see. So that's simplistic.
Martika was the last one I remember.
Right, exactly. So 3 dogs is too many because they're going to fight. Two dogs, a male and a female, are perfect. They love each other.
Uh,
And so you can winnow away all the complexity of your life and live for whatever it is that interests you and makes you happy. You can define that.
I was with you when you bought a horse in Kentucky. Now I was there for the whole thing. You tried out the horse. You got in a little carriage behind it. You looked at every angle of it.
Standard bred.
Yeah, you talked. I mean, you were hanging out with the horse. I was sitting there trying to figure out, have you bought the horse? Did he get the horse? I didn't even know. I was listening to every word of it. We got in the car, and you were like, "That's my horse." It's like, really? How did you?
On
what language did you guys speak? I listened to everything you said, and I never knew anyone bought a horse.
On that discipline, getting behind a trotting horse, and that's the bike they call it, the vehicle that has two shafts and connects these to the horse. That's a dangerous. You're going 40 miles an hour in a tight arena.
Yeah,
I've won world championships. I just won a world championship in that.
amazing.
6-7 days ago.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I don't.
It's a major accomplishment.
You know, one of the things I think about the wisdom, the earned wisdom of a performer once they've performed enough, like over and over again, is what you're saying about losing some of the, I guess, losing some of the fat. I think you said winning off the stuff that you don't need, and you can do with this. Like, here's the things you need to do. When you're a kid, you throw every bit of muscle, every bit of detail, everything you can at it as a performer, and you come up with a very energetic, inefficient, and inspired performance. And young musicians are awesome to listen to. It just flies out of the speakers. But as they get older, you expect them to start thinning that out some and being more efficient with their message and more efficient with their musicality.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of that I always assumed was forced, and I'll give you an example of a fellow Canadian, another Canadian genius, Leonard Cohen. And Leonard Cohen, probably in his day, might have had 6 notes in his voice. Right? Right. That's actually, that's not bad. Like almost an octave. He had some range.
Yeah.
That began by the time he was doing his last performances, he was probably down to 2 notes.
Right.
And he was down to half his volume.
When
but
he
the thing
died,
is, because he knew what to do with those 2 notes, right, and he knew what to do with that limited volume, it was actually extremely moving and very powerful. It was very zen in a way that when he was young, he could have never done.
Yeah.
The problem with you is you don't have any less energy. How are you limiting yourself?
Well,
do you find this happens naturally?
The problem is I can't sing. And had I taken those singing lessons and stayed in pitch and on time and learned to count 8 and all that kind of thing, I might have been able. But I know I love music and I yearn to sing and I admire voices. I want to talk to you at some point in time about voices and vocal cords and how you get that. And how does a soprano be able to get it? And then you get the colors. Sure, oh my God, how do they get there? Music is such an invention of mankind. It is so, except for the whales who sing,
yes,
but we don't know. There's an element of mystery. Are they neighing like the horse? Only this is the way they do. But mankind's uniqueness is mathematics. Here's my own opinion: is math and music, and math and music are related. I mean, a note is a mathematical thing, and a mathematical thing, if you play it, is a note. And color, come to think of it, color has the same mathematics. So maybe everything's mathematical.
Yeah, but here's what they have in common: patterns. That's what you just want to. That's why we love poetry that has rhymes. It's not because we love the rhymes. It establishes a pattern. And you are a very pattern-oriented speaker. You will say this. You will say this. And then you will say this. And so you get like a sense of pattern that's very, very simple. And then then you can put nuance all over that. And that's one of the beautiful things about the
See,
reason
that's
that you
such
pop
an
out.
interesting analysis by a musician. That's fantastic, man.
Yeah,
That's
no, you
fantastic.
have pattern. That's what
I
that's what you have.
love your insights. I love your creativity. You're an extraordinary human being,
No.
and a treasure. And I'm sorry, you're living in Australia, but you're in America. Are you an American or Australian?
I'm an American living in Australia and
Yeah.
America. So
Yeah, so you went to Australia because of love, and you've stayed in Australia. I mean, not the love of the country, but you've stayed in Australia for love of country, I guess, or escaping
you
tax.
know, I think no, it's nothing to do with taxes. It's I just think it's a great other place to live. I mean,
Oh,
and
Australia's
during
great.
all this time when we were freaking out in America, it was really wonderful to be somewhere that had a very level way of looking at
Right,
things, and
right,
my
right,
blood pressure stayed well below anyone's in America for the last year because
right. Well,
they
Australia's
were
a great
taking these.
country. Gosh, I've been there several times. Uh, I had an interesting experience. Ben, there was a guy who flew a twin engine airplane from North American I think it was North American, which is has their at least one of their um, hangars and industry here in Los Angeles. So the guy bought, I think, sort of a version of the B-24, something like that, twin engine plane. He's flying it, and he flies it alone, and he flies it from Los Angeles to New York to England through Europe, down Europe, through India, down India, over the line, and he flies it to Australia by himself. Okay,
Awesome.
and the big thing about flying is navigation. You can fly, set it, you know, you can go on at 30,000 feet. You're going along. It doesn't require much skill. It's where are you?
Right. Okay.
So now he lands in Australia and he sets up a business, and the business is taking people into the interior of Australia, where the opal mines are.
Okay. Yeah.
Copa Verde, something like that. So I'm there doing something, entertaining some way, and I have a couple of days, and the people who brought me there said, "Well, what would you like to do?" I said, "Well, I'd like to go to an opal mine." They said, "We got the guy to fly you." So I'm introduced to this guy who had made his way all the way down 20,000 miles, and he never got lost. And I get in this airplane, and I'm an amateur pilot. I had a license. I'm not
Oh,
current at the moment, but
I
I
know.
had a license. I flew a lot at one time. So now I'm in the right hand seat. He's in the left hand seat, and we're flying maybe 1,000 miles inland in Australia. And there is a thunderhead over there. And I know this is a well built airplane. I said, I've never been inside a thunderhead. Could we go in there? He says, of course. And we fly in, and the winds are up and down the shears. And finally we emerge. And he says, I flew 30,000 miles, and I knew exactly where I was the whole time. I have no idea where I am at the
Thanks, Bill.
before GPS, where you had to zoom in, and there's nothing there there were no radio stations in Cooper Pedy.
Cooper Petey.
Yeah,
And you're
I was
probably
in the
looking
middle.
down and it all just looks like dirt.
A desert, absolute
Yeah.
desert. And when we
Crazy.
got there, there was a handy store, and they had Southwester, the oilskins that you would wear in the ocean during a
Yeah.
big storm. There was some Southeastern. Anyway,
Yeah.
with the rain cap and the oils and the slicks, they had them for sale there.
Amazing.
What wouldn't you expect to have a terrible storm where these would come in? And I don't remember the answer, but I was floored.
That's cool. I mean, all this kind of, I'm just thinking of like my mind's always going about creativity because that's the podcast and what people listen to. And I think if someone like you just speaks of the things that are important to you, that there is creativity in that. One thing that occurs to me about you that hadn't occurred to me before really completely goes back to the Jim Morrison asking, why should he save his voice?
Right.
And you not doing takes the same way
Right.
twice. And the danger of that. And I think that when I think about you and your motorcycle. Now you had the kind of operation that would have. I'm a very careful person, and I would have been in bed for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. We were supposed to go down to the Caribbean together. We did, but a few days before, you had to have this operation. That would have put
That's
me
right.
down. Then you hopped on your motorcycle, and you thought you'd
And
go,
bleeding.
and you
Well,
fell off the
you know,
motorcycle after having it. And
so
then you went to. Then you
that
went. You,
that informs you of how stupid and rash I am. But
yeah, but it's
if the
danger,
same thing applies in
Mr. Danger.
creativity about varying it, here's the insight into those different performances, and that is, as you associate, I hope this is true of notes and lyrics, but as you associate with words in a character or a story, suddenly the words take on a different meaning, something you
Okay.
hadn't thought of
Okay. Yeah.
a split second before. Wait a minute, that could go, and you try it that
Right.
way, and that's good. And I think it's as good as the way I was doing it before, but it's at least different, and
Mm-hmm.
you're allowing your creative impulses to perceive that which can be created. Maybe
Yeah.
that's one way of putting it.
And you're more interested in that at that moment.
And you're interested in the creative. That's why painters will paint over their painting and start again, even though they've got a great painting. They're starting to mess with it because
I
they
know
want to.
people. I know people who are singers who are pretty much first take singers, and then some people who are like you just know they're going to be 30, and that's good. Like you might get it on the 30th take. That's fine. You got Joe Jackson warming up for hours and stuff. Yours were a matter of the first take was always usable, the second, the third, and the fourth take, and then you weren't interested anymore. And all of them were just as good as each other. They were absolutely incompatible as far as an edit would go because you sounded like a different person saying a different thing. And interestingly, and this may be interesting for musicians, I thought I would be able to edit you forward or backward of the beat because you're not speaking literally on the beat. However, I never moved you a fucking skosh because every time I did, it didn't mean anything anymore. And the engineer and the people around me I don't think, they thought I was maybe being a little bit too juju about it. But I was like, no, when I move Bill, I'm not understanding. I don't believe that guy anymore. I just moved him one skosh. I don't believe him.
One song we did on our album, that rhythmic song, where you just added percussion after percussion, and Henry Rollins and I did a song totally in the rhythm of it, and you were laying, and I sat there listening to you add both with your hands and other hands, drums, guitars, cowbells, and finally you ended up with one little bing, and it was like it was so creative rhythmically. I mean, you talk to somebody on the street, you say, "Well, yeah, ba can be creative." Wow, yeah, that's how it's creative. That's
But
how
interestingly,
somebody has rhythm.
we're working with a lead singer at that point, you and Henry's done a lot of music albums, but you don't try to quote rap over it. You're speaking in the musical cracks. Like you're speaking inside intuitively in the musical cracks. And it is very unique. I don't know anyone else who I've heard do that because most people want to be rhythmic or they want to sing or they want to make a spoken word record that is almost divorced of the music. Like you could put another bed and just do it. When you're writing lyrics, and on this album, your lyrics came first. They were what inspired everything. Did you have a melody in mind? I never asked you. I just gave you one.
Here's the question I wanted to ask you. Like we have a lyric for "Lion on the Wall," which is a song about my kid. She's 4 or 5, and she's suddenly in the middle of the night, and I'm in the bedroom next to hers, and she starts crying. I come in, I said, "What's the matter?" She was seeing shadows on the wall, saying, "A lion's going to get me." And I explained it's just shadows, and I was able to comfort her. And the song was about being able to comfort the child, saying it's a lion on the wall. But as their troubles get more and more complex, you can't comfort people that easily.
Right.
That's the gist of the song.
But it's got a melody, interestingly. There's a lion on the wall. Like it's got
lyrics give you the melody. So my question for you is this. We would we would talk about what the song is about. Lyricists would write the song, and we would talk about the words. Now we had a song. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. And we'd turn it over to the musician. He'd write, what kind of a song is this? Is this a rock and roll song? Is it a Western country song? Is it a spiritual? We even have a spiritual there. But when do you say this is the métier of the song? When do you write a song and say, I'm going to write a rock and roll? Or does the lyric lend itself to rock? When do you make a decision as to the type of song it is?
Man, I think it's like a take, and it's probably it's very forced on a set because it's really expensive to get all those parts together. So if we left you to your devices and you know you didn't have to worry about doing coverage and staying the same on some things, you might be 4 different people that day. The director might choose the one that seems to work, and it's just luck. I think in a way,
changed the tempo, because the tempo is, the lyric is to death. But if you wanted to,
right,
tougher than the rest. I remember tougher than the rest. So I'm tougher than the rest. So what kind of a song is this? And I don't know where. Tougher than the rest. So now suddenly you've got an angle, right?
Yeah.
So
I know, but the stylistically doesn't really matter. I mean, it's almost like, unless you're making some reference or something. I mean, there was a moment where I was having a real hard time with a song you wanted to write for Liz. Familiar Love was the name of the song. And I was having a hard time. I wanted it to be, it meant so much to you. I wanted it to be real, but it was also, it had an affectation, poetic affectation that was, in and of itself seemed slightly distancing, even though you wanted to be close. And then I realized this is a 50s song. The reason I'm not relating to it is because it's like an old Ink Spot song. And so we made it in that style, and suddenly it just about made me cry, because then I understood the filter with which you needed to speak through in order to tell her what you wanted to tell her.
See, you never said anything like this when we were making the album.
Well, I didn't want you to be too aware of things. You were like, Pete Townsend of The Who said this wonderful thing that I really took to heart. It's like, when you're making music, you need one person to live it and the other person to realize it.
Wow.
So you were living it, and I needed to intellectualize it and realize it, but I didn't need to burden you with it.
What a great insights you've had in this talk with me. That's simply marvelous. I can't wait. Well, I'll have to wait until this album is successful enough for the label to pick up the next. They have an option.
They should pick up the next one anyway. Just sight unseen.
But it's getting great reviews, getting rave reviews.
That's awesome.
E.T., I had a moment that you faced all your life that I have too, where you've presented something. Okay, here's the album. And you send it out, and now it's being reviewed, and you're talking to your first interviewer. And they say, well, Ben, I heard your album. ... And you're thinking, here's my first review. What are they going to say? It's the worst thing I've ever heard. It's glorious. I mean, anything in between, what are they going to say? And so E.T. said, I heard your album. And I said, okay, wait a minute. You're my first review. You are about to announce a first review. Oh my God, I don't know whether I can take this moment. What do you think? And he said, I was flabbergasted.
Oh, amazing. That's great.
Flabbergasted. I said, was that good? And then we had a laugh about what the word where does flabbergast come from? I began to dwell on where does the word flabbergast come from?
Now, there's your next album.
Right.
I love words like that.
So I love words like that too. I mean, flabbergast is a hard word. You couldn't rhyme it, but you might be able to, avast there. You flabbergasted. So it's a so the question that I was really trying to ask is, in writing a song, how do you know what the tempo, what the orchestration is? How do you surround those words? What choices are you making? And that seems to me to be a mystery.
It is a mystery. And some of it is that moment, that day, and the chance of what's stuck. Sometimes something sticks, and it sticks just long enough that it just becomes the thing. I mean, I think so much of it's random. And then one of the beautiful things about working through Has Been so quickly is we got to just live with the random. It's like we've got Henry here for a couple minutes. You guys are shouting at each other. Then we brought in some seriously famous musicians like Adrian Belew and people who were like,
you just phoned everybody from Nashville. They were all living in Nashville. You call them on the phone, and in an hour they'd be down into the studio.
Yeah, because they want to make an album with you, and it's like, so they came down there. We're throwing stuff against the wall. You guys shouted it about 5 times, and like they say in Australia, Bob's your uncle. That's it. Why? I don't know, because it's making me happy, and we move on. And there's much.
You laid layer after layer. You were, however that mind of yours works, which would be an interesting examination for an interview. How that musical mind of yours works intuitively and also because of your experience in music. You've experienced a lot of music, so you have that alphabet, if you will, in you. So you say, oh, that's like a 50s song. We'll do it that way. That was an interesting song, Familiar Love. I mean, who's ever written about love that's familiar is just as passionate.
Great.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that it's got raw lyrics in it that are actually extremely still really hip in even not just punk rock, but R&B and hip hop. There's a rawness to the lyrics because you mention some things that are against the law to be saying in lyrics, like something about noises from within. And you're sort of like, you imagine a one night stand where it's like someone's tummy made a noise, or there's something that there's a self-consciousness about, and you realize, I don't know what's inside this person or me. Who is this motherfucker? Like, you just don't know. And I think that that's really raw and interesting. You actually had a song that was so raw, it was even called Do I Rub You Raw? And we just couldn't use it because it was just too raw.
I've written a love song, the title of which will suggest to you the whole lyric, I forget everything but you.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Hey, I know that you have what was described to me as a hard out, and that sounds really dirty.
Vaguely sexual.
Yeah, but you seem to have one. Well, and so you got to get the hell out of here at some point.
Let me just take a look at what I'm doing. Oh, I got to be someplace at 2 o'clock.
You got to be somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I got to go.
Man, even if this was a performative catch up because other people watch it, I'm so happy to see you. You look awesome, man.
You do too. I the best thing that I could think of is that you and I sit down over a table where we can eat and have some fun.
Yeah.
Just be in each other's company for a while.
I can't wait to see you. I love you too. You taught me so much.
This is one of those romances that are Australian and America, but you're one of the great guys in my life, and I look forward to seeing you. I've kidded around on location. I remember once there was quite a wind blowing and bothering the mics. The flow of air over the microphone was causing a humping sound that they couldn't get rid of, and they said they had to stop shooting because of the wind. And I said, it's okay, I'll take care of the wind. And I stood in front of the camera with my arms outstretched and said, stop the wind. And the wind stopped. We shot, and the wind picked up. Now, that's crazy.
Well, I think your life is like that. Hi, Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot. Thank you so much for watching Lightning Bugs on YouTube. Check out more episodes and subscribe if you have not already. You can also listen to Lightning Bugs wherever podcasts may be found.